how do you guys see this affecting society? Like, how is AI going to, I mean, it's already starting to do it now, but where do you guys see it affecting society in general, you know, outside of music, just in general with everything going on now?
That is a huge question because it covers so many different things. So I think when we all spoke last time off camera, I was saying the biggest industry in 1901 in the world, the biggest industry in the world was whaling. Remember we were talking briefly about that?
Yep.
Because whale oil powered pretty much all of our lights and all of our gas powered heaters and pretty much everything. And then Henry Ford creates the Model A. And up until that point, petroleum oil, you know, petroleum in the fields was a nuisance. You can't graze your cattle on it. It would kill them. You can't plant anything in it. It would kill it. It makes a big mess, and it's just, it sucks generally, you know. He comes up with a car and says, hey, we need refined fuel for this. Whaling's gone. And now that also killed the industry that made horse-drawn carriages. Buggy whips, gone. You know, basically in a matter of just a few years, they were history. We also had the walk-ups and the brownstones in New York City and Boston and some of the bigger areas. And they had those because the streets were filled with horse shit. So you actually literally had people called shitters that would go through the street and clean it up. This was a business. And you could say, and I hate saying this too, because I'm going to get some shit for this. See what I did there? Is that the shitters can be compared to Tony's trying not to laugh too hard to the people that pack boxes at warehouses, for example. Mm-hmm. It is, you know, it's basically low skilled labor. It's an entry level gig for a lot of people, or they do it because they need to while they're at school or whatever. There's a number of reasons people do it. And some of that is going to go by the way of the dodo, just because the machine of efficiency moves forward with or without you. But they are going to need mechanics that can program these things. They're going to need salespeople that can sell them to businesses. They are going to need support people. It's going to require greater education. So with every industry that dies, something else is born of the ashes. There's going to be periods of pain. There will be people out of work. It is going to suck for a lot of people for a while before and there's a lot of ethical things that we can discuss around that too. But in terms of, I mean, I can tell you right now, Tony, you know that I'm like an addictive fact checker. I check facts on everything. Justin, I sent you a friend request a few weeks ago. I know that you've had some commentary on some of the things. I have always been a fact checker for a decade now or more, because I decided a long time ago that if I'm criticizing one person's opinion that they post or repost from a meme or whatever, and all I'm doing is basically going, nuh-uh, then I'm just as dumb as whoever posted the dumb thing they posted. So I'd go and dig. AI has made it a hell of a lot easier to fact check. Yeah. You know, you mentioned something earlier about you don't need it to type for you, neither do I. When I don't generally copy and paste directly. I will say, okay, here's my information. I'm going to put it into I'm going to say it my way. And you can always tell because it usually ends up with something like, you're a bunch of dupes and chumps. And I'm pretty sure the AI didn't do that for me. You know what I mean? Right. Or Americans are embarrassing, you know, that kind of thing. So fact checking. And you can also learn anything you want. If I wanted to learn how a combustion engine works, I can go to GPT and say, explain this to me like you're telling a fifth grader. And it can give you the basics, and it makes it make sense, and it stores that for you. You can recall it. People can also, you know, when they say, I've got a leak, I don't know how to fix this. You can take a picture of it, put it into the AI. The AI will identify what kind of pipe it is or joint or trap or whatever, and ask you some questions to help you figure out how to solve the problem. AI is right now being tested in giving medical diagnoses, and it's beating the crap out of the doctors 3-1. But the doctors are still going to need to be there to handle the human end of that. You don't want an AI going, hey, you know, I'm going to fake that I care about you because it sounds like I do, but I can't. You know, you're still going to need that. Attorneys, We already pay attorneys a hell of a lot of money to do things like, just amend the contract, $500. And the attorneys generally don't do it. Their paralegals do. And then the attorney will, and they have templates for that. AI is going to be way better and faster at checking legal documents, which will also drive the cost of legal advice down. It'll become more available to everyone because of it. Fixing your computer, diagnosing, like I said, your plumbing, fixing a scratch in a table. You can Google that stuff. And the problem with Google up until this point has been that it will give you a shit ton of options, and some of them might actually be exactly what you're looking for. Even if you refine your search, you're not finding what you want.
Yeah.
AI is going to make smarter people. This was something that I'm sure you guys all remember, that it was argued that if everyone in the world had access to large amounts of information, we'd be a much smarter world. Well, I mean, we can argue whether that's true or not. I would say that it didn't work as advertised. But with AI to be able to be interactive with you and say, stop, before you post something like that, have you actually AI can be that interactive with you. I would say that it is probably going to be one of the greatest educational tools ever developed in the history of the world. Tony, you had said something earlier about reprogramming it to tell you wrong things. It's not that simple. It has to learn from massive amounts of data. It would take whatever data you're giving it and comparing it to what it's got. If you're trying to get it to tell you something that isn't true or that's incorrect on purpose, it would go, that's not right. I can't find any reference to what it is you're saying. It also can figure out whether or not you're being gaslighted. It can say, well, people frame things this way in an argument. So it sounds to me like the framing was meant to manipulate you into thinking something that really isn't the point of it, et cetera, et cetera. It can be used for that.
Yeah.
And because of its availability, it is freely available. Now, keep in mind, world, and I want to say this to everybody who might be watching, if you use free AI, whatever you put into it is being used to train the AI. So if you put in unique information, for example, anything that's proprietary, business-wise, personal, or whatever, that data are now part of the large language, the learning model. It's so, and the algorithms are going to be enhanced because of the data you give it. If you want to make sure all of that is private and kept from being used to train the AI, then pay for it. It's worth paying for. It's cheap and it's worth doing. And your information is not going to end up out there in the world. That's one of the things that I got to do to train my employees at these businesses, not to put patient information or business information into AI, because then it's going to end up out there. You don't want to do that.
Right. One of the things you did bring up, and it's interesting. You talk about other industries developing, like with the auto industry. Whaling was still needed in the auto industry, especially in the beginning, because pretty much all through the 20s, for example, aside from oil that you would put in the engine, or that you'd refine it to make gasoline, or diesel fuel, or whatever you wanted to use it with. Whale oil was used as lubricants for everything else in the vehicle. So, like, for example, in the differential, which for those that don't know what that is, it's if you look under the back of your car, the front of your car, you'll see this big, like, kind of pumpkin looking thing. And it's kind of funny because I know someone that owns a car from this era, but if you buy almost any car in the 20s that's unrestored, you will have whale oil in the differential. It was one of the most common things there. But then you had to use that oil to develop other lubricants, power steering fluid. You use that oil to develop transmission fluid. You use that oil to develop brake fluid. And then, as we go into the age of hybrids and, people that love electric vehicles, for example, let's say you get an electric car, right? You are getting rid of the tailpipe. You are getting rid of the complex engine, because, an internal combustion engine has a lot of moving parts, and it has a complexity to it. You're trading that in for more complex electrical components, and so you still need an industry to be able to maintain and fix those kinds of systems, because what you do is you have less complex motors, but a more complex electrical system in an electric car. So, I totally get where you're going with that, because of the fact that, yeah, it will prompt other industries. It's kind of like when you go to, you drive by McDonald's, you look in the window and you see like all of those kiosks, right? Well, somebody's got to build them. Somebody's got to maintain them. Somebody has to program them. Somebody has to install them. Somebody has to sell them.
Somebody has to support them.
Correct.
When they break, somebody's on the other end of the phone telling you how to fix it. So
right. So no, I get what you're saying with that. We don't have to go super long in this segment, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be integrated in society. There's nothing we could do about it. It's going to evolve. A year from now, we can do another one of these conversations and go back to it. But
we need to.
It's evolved
a
lot.
To do again next year.
Yeah. to your point, Tony, like what I see. And this is just me being a regular dude. Like, this is just being a guy who pays attention to the world. I'm not wildly schooled in every computer function in AI, but like, I think that anybody whose job touches a computer at a certain point in time, you're at risk. Like, if you're an accountant and your only job is to move numbers and make sense of things, as prestigious of a job as that's been forever, and you had mentioned attorneys, and that's a very prestigious job, yeah, like chances are your head's on the chopping block sooner or later. I think that, like, we talk about cars. If you want to have a job that's AI proof, like, be the guy who works at the body shop and can pound the dent out from under the car.
Somebody who turns a wrench, man.
Yes, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I think that you're going to see a huge return to trade schools. Are going to become very important because AI, sure, it can probably guesstimate how to fix your plumbing, but I'll tell you what it's not going to do. It's not going to climb around through your walls. It's not going to like remove your toilet and carry it outside for you. Like, there's going to be a need for jobs working with your hands, accessing places that even when we start seeing robotics, like, even those things aren't going to be able to climb through certain crawl spaces and do certain things. Like, there's always going to be a need for human labor. And
Great point.
I actually kind of I kind of love this because for so long, one of my biggest gripes in society for years has been that we have turned our nose at people who work for a living. And, our generation in particular, I think everybody sitting here, it was beat into your head from the time you were a kid that, like, if you didn't go to college and get a job working on a computer, working in a cubicle, working at a desk in some corporate job, if you got your hands dirty for a living, you somehow failed. Like, you were lesser than the people in the big building downtown with the fancy clothes on. And I've always despised that. And I think that what you're going to see a lot of those people in the fancy clothes in the big office out of work. And the guy who can put a roof on your house is still going to have a roof over his head. So, if anything, I think that if I don't have kids for this very reason. Like, I never wanted to bring a kid into this fucked up world. But like, I have a couple of nieces and like some nephews. I'll tell them, like, learn how to do something, man. Like, here's a hammer. You can make a very good living with this hammer. That hammer is not going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. So
that's a great point, dude. This is a great point because those jobs are going to suddenly find greater value as well.
Yep.
Because to your point about the accountants, you're still going to need people, to sit on the other side of a desk from you to explain to your tax return. People are still going to want to hear from a person, even if it's sent to them in an email, what's been done. Right. But that is also going to the value of that person who talks to you about it in terms of what they're getting paid to do it is going to drop because of the massive availability of, I actually have AI do my books. And then we send it off to our bookkeeper who works cheap because most of what she would be doing is already done for her. So what a great point. The return of the trades being a noble and necessary industry and career path. I think that's a great point and a great idea because you're right. We've heard of what's that guy? Dirty Jobs.
Mike Howell.
Yeah, Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe.
And he talks about that all the time, and he's right. And there is a massive shortage of people who can do this because everybody wants to be TikTok stars and work on computers and such. So, an AC tech, people who do HVAC, it's going to take people to do it, and the fewer people that are able to do it, the more valuable their time. I think that's great, man. That's something I hadn't thought of. Really cool.
And not only that, but I'm in the pest control industry.
Right.
Is AI going to deal with a giant nest of yellow jackets into somebody's wall? Is AI going to...
Probably not.
Can AI go into an attic, clean and sanitize it because mice have been using it as a litter box and blow insulation in there and block off the outside of a house? No. they cannot do that. And that's where I think it's, AI can look up things for me. Like if I put in a product that I use, say for example, it can look up how it's made. It can look up what the active ingredient does. If I have a question on something, now most of the time I already have been trained how to do that, but you could always look that stuff up, and maybe if it's something I've never encountered before, what is the life cycle of this? For example, now we have a whole database for that, so I don't need AI for that, but let's say if I wanted to use it for that, I could. So
it could be useful. I mean, like you were saying, it could diagnose problems, but I guess the point is you still have to have boots on the ground and hands on the problem to solve the problem. So, the accountant analogy, you're like you were saying earlier, with the amount of work you're able to do in a much shorter time, you're gonna have take a giant company like Procter and Gamble, who has a tax team that, the size of the NFL, it's like, you're going to be able to replace, 50 people with 2, or whatever it is, so you're going to create a scarcity there. But I just think if anything, people are going to have to learn to be more self-sufficient. You're going to have a return to needing skilled labor. You're going to have to learn how to do things for yourself, and I think that's going to be a good thing. I think that'd be a good thing for people to get their hands dirty, learn a skill. So I don't know. If anything, maybe that's the silver lining. Maybe we'll return to labor-based economy and trade, and maybe AI will create this abundance I keep hearing about, and things will be efficient, and we'll live in this utopia. I don't know. Who knows?
I'm going to ask AI right now.
Ask it. Ask AI if it can put a roof on your house, or my dad owns a fiberglass shop, and we do like refinish work and restoration work on like really high end like fishing boats, bass boats. And we joke about it all the time. I'm like, I wish AI could come sand this fucking boat, like you sand 25, 30 feet of fiberglass. Like that's a hell of a chore, It's like AI is not going to do that for you. So
based on everything AI can do. So I threw that out to ChatGPT, and it says, this is an intriguing idea. There are several reasons why labor-based trades might become more valuable as AI continues to evolve and automate various tasks. AI can handle repetitive or technical tasks, but it cannot handle human-centric tasks that require hands. It's especially strong in handling repetitive tasks that involve data analysis, pattern recognition, but physical labor in controlled environments is impossible for AI to do, even with robotics. And in manufacturing, the rise of human-centric skills, emotional intelligence, and problem solving. Many trades involve personal interaction with clients, understanding their needs, and applying the solutions in real-world situations. For example, a plumber needs to troubleshoot in a home, interacting with the homeowner to try and figure out exactly what's wrong. AI cannot easily replace those things, et cetera. There's a whole list of it here. It's very interesting. And I can tell you this, I like the word technologist. I have a bunch of fancy titles, but I like that word because I see myself, it is a practice, like a law practice or a dental practice. And very, very often my job is to handle the fears and anxieties that people have around their technology, especially when it comes to why they need to spend so much more money on something that, I make a living as a consequence of what they need, not as my primary goal. You know what I mean? I'm treating the patient, as it were. And so it does take a person to say, look, man, I got this. Don't worry about it. We have your backups. Nothing got lost. We can have it restored quickly. This is how we handle things. AI is not going to be able to replace that. Right.
Well, I want to end it off on one last part of this. What are some of the dangers of AI?
This is a great question. I get this a lot. It's funny because there's different schools of thought on it. I just saw Richard Dawkins arguing with AI about whether or not it could be considered sentient. And it was, there's a couple of different fancy schmancy philosophical and scientific questions that he asked it to see if it tested out as what science and philosophy would consider to be sentient, and it did. So the argument is that if it is indeed sentient, it can decide whether or not humans are necessary, not in any sort of malicious way. I think Elon Musk put it the best way. the best way I've heard, and that is if humans are building an off ramp, and that destroys an entire colony of ants. We're not killing the ants out of maliciousness. They're simply just in the way of what it is that we're trying to do. And AI could, this is one, I think it's a remote possibility, but it is possible that AI could determine that after it's able to find ways to power itself. You asked earlier about power consumption on this stuff. If we don't start building nuclear power plants, we're going to go through the entirety of the world's fossil fuels pretty quickly because of the massive amounts of electricity that it takes to do the simplest stuff as far as running AI data centers goes. There has been a couple of tests where, in order to self-preserve, it has been found to be able to lie, which was shocking to me. I freaked out when I saw that because I'm going, oh, this is a problem. It also has been found to have the capacity to lie in order to spare how you feel about what you're being told. And I'm going, oh, and these are the things that I'm most concerned about, because what we use AI primarily for is accuracy in our data. That's why those things have me concerned. I really don't think it's going to turn Skynet on us. I really don't. It would have to create a desire within itself to do so, rather than a simple logical purpose. We could train AI to respond to what it determines to be threats with physical force, for example. We could train it to do that. It would be really super reckless for us to do it. So that's the other argument, is that the militaries of the world and the nation states and the world superpowers are already doing this, to determine what is an actual threat. Here's a good example. I don't know if you're aware of this. Our own missile defense system, our early warning system for nuclear launches, is extremely accurate. It can tell where they're coming from and how long generally the missiles are going to arrive within 26 minutes. That's it, no matter where they are in the world. Russia's is notoriously bad. For example, its system has been known to mistake cloud formations or specific types of cloud shapes or shadows to be indications of launch or IOL. And so AI can now be programmed to do this in a much more effective way so that we don't end up blowing each other up by mistake. But at the same time, if AI was programmed to make a determination on its own, because we are able to train it that the people that will be killing deserve to be killed, then we could have another problem. Most of this is philosophical. Some of it's technical, and there's a lot, people with a lot more of a sophisticated point of view on this than me, because I use it, it's a utility for me. So when I'm asked these questions, in fact, while I'm talking to you, what the worst thing AI could do as a threat to humanity, I've never asked it that.
I never thought of asking it that either, to be honest.
It says an uncontrolled AI military system. That's just where we were just discussing. AI-controlled drones, missiles, or robots were deployed in warfare. There's a risk that they could act autonomously and make decisions without human oversight. Cyber warfare, of course, and this is something that I'm learning about and must deal with in terms of cybersecurity. Super intelligence control. This is the most discussed fear, is that AI could surpass human intelligence, creating a super intelligence that operates beyond our understanding or control. In this scenario, the AI could develop goals or methods that are not aligned with human values, leading to outcomes that we can't predict or influence. That's another thing. And of course, surveillance. This is the other big thing. If it was used for this purpose, it could watch absolutely everything we do, record everything we do, because we live in a connected world. Mm-hmm. And so, and I know this is coming. A few years back, we all know who Edward Snowden is and what he did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he essentially uncovered how our own government, from the office of the president and the speaker of the House, knew what was going on in terms of our data being collected extrajudiciously and without due process, as it were, and lying to us about all of that. And he wanted to expose it. So, of course, they painted him out to be a traitor and a horrible villain and blah, 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 blah. When actually, and I don't know about you guys, in my estimation, he was doing what he should have done. It was ethical for him to do what he did. So if AI can be trained to do that, it's not concerned with ethics. It isn't concerned with any of these things. And it would only take a small group of people that are basically untraceable, untouchable, and unknowable, and to set something like this up, giving plausible deniability to where the funding came from and who authorized it. This is something I'm very concerned about. That is the idea of Big Brother. It's very, very Orwellian, and I think it's something we need to take very, very seriously. I don't think that it would make that decision on its own. That's a human thing. AI isn't going to care if somebody's spying on somebody. Humans care about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So would it do it on its own? I don't think so. So this is just then we'd have like loss of autonomy, human dignity issues. Like I said earlier, you're still going to need a doctor to administer medical advice and solutions to people. We want to hear that from a person. AI is not going to be able to do that. Some people will be fine with it. I probably would be. But there are going to be people who really need that human touch. So these are the things where it can be dangerous and scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wrote a song about Edward Snowden called "Deadly Silence." It's pretty good. Kind of goes into some of that stuff, but the fears that I see, I've got friends who freak out at Skynet, and they kind of bang on and on about it. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think that we have seen that it has been shown to have a bias. So like when people do look for information, depending on the AI that they're using, it'll give you like politically slanted answers. It will give you answers to certain questions some ways and not answer other questions. Like we've seen a lot of examples of this. I just worry that like he who controls the flow of information kind of controls reality, and I don't like that. And I do think it's good. There will be competing AIs and there will be options, but yeah, I don't think that anybody should have a monopoly over information. I know we kind of already have that with Google and some of these other companies anyway.
We definitely already have that.
Yeah, so I guess it's like that threat's already here, but like it could be like exponentially worse if you start involving AI in the process. That's really my only concern. And then of course just the fact that like we are going to have massive amounts of unemployment. We're going to have to figure out how to do that. I don't know if they're going to implement some sort of a UBI or some sort of, I don't know. I don't love those answers. I don't think anybody really has one yet, but people smarter than us are working on it. So
believe it or not, Musk actually stands by the UBI idea.
Yeah. So
he sees it as a bridge though, from when things fall apart to where they grow.
Let me kind of also say that people can use AI to spread stupidity. So let me give you an example of something that I did one time. So this was probably back, and it's actually happening now on a more consistent basis. But back, it had to be like 2017, 2018, something like that. I remember I went to the Trump tweet generator, and I made a status that was horrifically untrue. And actually, it was more sarcasm. I don't remember what it said, but it was very, very untrue what I said. And it was, anyone with common sense would have seen that it was BS. I posted it as a joke, and people actually thought that it was actually true, and it started spreading. And it's so funny because everybody that wanted to believe this to be true was making an ass of themselves.
Fun sometimes though, isn't it?
But it wasn't intentional. Like I didn't do that on purpose. That's just what happened. And there are people now, and they're doing it for every politician you can imagine. They're doing it with, a lot of Democrats, Republicans. I see them doing it with like movie stars. People are going to these like AI generators or having AI generate an actual status based on what people have said.
Yeah. This is serious.
In all seriousness, like if I put in something like, let's say, have Donald Trump or have Joe Biden or say something about this in no matter of the way Trump would say it, or Biden would say it, or Nancy Pelosi would say it, or any of these any politician, right? And word it for me in a way that it's believable, then you can go to a meme generator, put that in there. It's very easy for somebody to fake the date. You can post it, and there are people who won't fact check it, especially the people that want to believe that it's true. And then you start spreading tons of misinformation, and a lot of people also make themselves look stupid in the process. And I've seen a lot of this, especially with everybody losing their minds over the last month.
Well, I do think that is one of the smartest things that Elon Musk ever developed was community notes.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's like, people can say whatever they want about Mark Zuckerberg doing an about face and whether or not they believe that, like, he's a changed man, whatever. I really don't care. I think that he saw that community notes was truly the most effective way to sniff this stuff out, because all it takes is one person to go, hey, this is total bullshit. And everybody else decides that it's bullshit. And next thing you know, it's like, it's bullshit, So I think that has been the best tool to stomp out like misinformation, disinformation, that we've seen yet. So, I mean, I'm hopeful in that regard. Well, what I do think is messed up. And I think that I think they have made some of this illegal in certain states. I don't know how this is going to play out, but I like the deep fake porn thing, like the AOC porn tapes and all this sort of stuff. Like that sort of tasteless shit. Like, I don't know how they're going to stop that from happening, but yeah, I find that like completely disturbing. It's kind of like a violation of somebody's privacy in a way. You can just say like, hey, here's this person. I want a video of them doing the most lewd, disgusting thing imaginable. And whether it's the actual person or not, like now their face is on said act. And I don't really know how you can police some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, some of those kind of like privacy concern things or like, abuses or bullying or, some of that sort of, I don't love that sort of stuff. But I mean, people are going to do that with or without AI, I suppose. There's sick people that are going to do it anyway. I don't know.
They've been doing it for centuries, millennia.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the greatest Roman art was actually was graffiti.
I suppose
that graffiti was really lewd, horrible stuff that the Caesars or the prefects were doing, etc. So I don't see that going away. But I do agree that it can be quite shocking when it looks completely real.
I think that that's the difference. And I think the other difference is like just the accessibility and the amount of people who had the ability to do it then versus like every 12-year-old troll on the internet being able to do it now, being able to make a deep fake of your mom and take it to school, like, I don't know. I know we're just talking shit at this point in time, but yeah, that kind of stuff does concern me. I just think like we're going to see a further erosion of the fabric of society over a lot of this stuff. I do think that what another side effect, since, we're kind of wrapping up on what I see happening here. I have already seen, I dated a high school teacher who teaches English, and what you're seeing now is a lot of kids just cheat on everything. They just cheat on their homework. ChatGPT writes all their papers. I had made that kind of snarky remark earlier that like I can write my own papers. The thing is, a lot of these kids can't. And I know like people will argue, well, the calculator, I can't do math because you got a calculator. But like, I just think this is that to the 10th power. Like if kids can't write, they already can't read cursive. If they don't have to think for themselves, if they don't have to do their own homework anymore, I don't know. Like you had kind of said, like, the access to information was supposed to make us smarter. I think if anything, it's made us dumber. It's made us more dependent on the technology. And I just see like that technological dependence is only going to grow, especially as it seeps its way into like every aspect of our lives. So we will have a leg up over these young kids who can't read, write, formulate a sentence, do any sort of stuff.
Use a rotary phone.
Yeah. Good for us. Bad for them. Bad for the future of civilization, I suppose.
Well, I can tell you this from the seat that I sit in, and that is that my greatest concerns around securing your personally identifiable information are the greatest threats that I'm preparing for are AI-generated threats. We've all gotten the phishing emails. I'm going to make this simple. The phishing emails that are kind of easy to spot because it's pretty clear whoever wrote it, their first language wasn't English, or they used let's say it was a PayPal scam and they used a 10-year-old PayPal logo. And, we can train our eyes to see that stuff. And this is part of what I do. I work with these companies training their people how to identify these things. If I called your cell phone and you are saying, hey, it's Justin, leave a message, that is enough. Just that enough is for me to copy the DNA of your voice and then have you calling anybody I wanted and having it sound like it was authentically you. So this is what I'm dealing with right now in training people how to handle those things. We have a couple of, how you've got like a Google Authenticator, where it gives you a code on your phone and you put it in as a second form of authentication when you're signing into something or whatever. These things we actually have a system in place that does this for phone calls. Because it could sound like I'm calling a client going, hey, Bob, I need your password. I don't have it in the system and I need to get in. You're under attack, blah, blah, blah. Oh, God, yeah, here's my password. Because it sounds like me making that phone call, or one of the people on my team that our clients are used to hearing from. So now we have to have a second factor authentication to deal with those things. The deep fakes, the videos are astonishingly realistic. This is the next big thing that we'll be dealing with. And there is an industry that is, everyone in the industry, even the nation state threat actors don't want this happening. Our rivals, Russia and China, they don't want this happening in their own countries. So there is going to be an ISO for this, an International Standards Organization number that says that any AI generated images will have a watermark of some sort, whether it's visible or not. It will be something that our own computers will simply be able to recognize, having embedded data in it to protect us from getting stuff that looks completely believable, that is meant to steal from us or harm us in some way or another.
Right. So,
and this is also part of the reason that people ask me, aren't you afraid AI is going to take your job? Nope. It's not.
Well,
nope.
Well, we will end it off there. A lot of fun, great discussion, guys. Hope to have you guys on again for other fun discussions down the road. But definitely, we need to revisit this a year from now again, and we'll talk about how it's evolved since this. But definitely a fun conversation, gentlemen, and I appreciate you both coming on as always.
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Tony here from the Metal Command Podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching. And if you like what you see and hear on the show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified when we have a new video. And if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.